Hey, this little episode is for all you tennis fans out there. You can apply it to on and off the court, as well as any athletes can just mix in what I'm saying and how it applies to their sports. But it's really concentrated on that tennis player. As tennis players, we know we demonstrate behaviors on the tennis court. Behaviors could be throwing down your racket. It could be hitting your leg with your racket, head down, screaming, saying certain things, and all of those things are demonstrated to some things that are happening in your private world. Things like, oh, I'm not good enough. I can't believe I missed that shot. How could I have been so silly to hit that ball into the net? Geez, I'm going to lose this match. If you're a tennis player, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We all go through it with the private thoughts, and we're just kind of wrestling around, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting being a tennis player because you're constantly battling these things in your head. And a lot of times when you go to practice, you focus more on your physical games, your patterns of play, your technique, and little time is focused on that mental game, which we all know, we heard it 1,000 times. The tennis game is 90% mental. So it's just really a great chance and a great opportunity at this point to start practicing when you're able to get back onto the court, your mental game, your private thoughts game. So I'm going to give you some tips and tricks, as well as reference some other tennis books that you've probably heard of or possibly have read. So we all know our private thoughts of fear, anxiety, sadness, angry, all of those things it's one of those things that in order for us to survive, we need those things. We need to have fear, we need to have a little anxiety because it's for survival. So we need to welcome that. We need to understand that's okay. Hey, I'm going to talk a little bit more about time to talk about your private thoughts in your inner game of tennis. So, at practice, we're always practicing what our physical technique, our tennis strokes, our footwork, our patterns of play, our strategies. And sometimes this little time is focused on those private things that are happening through your head that have such a huge impact on your game. So I'm going to be discussing ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy, which is the third wave of applied behavioral analysis. And to give you a little bit of insight to move forward successfully with your tennis game. Now, how to do that? I'm going to give you some things that you're going to be like, aha, that's me, that's what I'm doing, that's what I'm saying, and that's the result of what happens because of those things. So we always have to recognize that accepting that those are thoughts, that in order for humans to survive, we need fear, we need anxiety, we need to feel mad, we need to feel angry, we need to feel happy. All of those things provide us with a survival mechanism. So say you're walking in the dark, you would have a little bit of fear and a little bit of anxiety because it has trained you to be observant of your environment. We know that we need to have a little bit of anxiety for survival to kind of let us know maybe that's not a good idea or I should stay away from that. Feelings of anger will, for survival mode of understanding like, you know what, that's not right, and I need to stand up for what I believe in. So there's all these things that you have to understand that all those emotions are great and we need to welcome them. What happens is when we fester on all of those emotions and they take control of us and they start being us, that's when we need to change gears and do something about it. So the acceptance commitment therapy is I accept that And all of those things in the tennis game when you're on the tennis court are happening rather than trying to push and pull and tug and talk in your head about those private thoughts. It's exhausting. And how in the world can you hit the ball when all of these things are going on in your head? And that is what we need to kind of unwrap here today. So, how to start out with what you want to do is when you're on the tennis court, and before you get out there, so this is a great opportunity for you to practice on this exercise. If you wanted to write them down, is the values that you have as a tennis player. Hey, tennis players and or athletes can really utilize the stuff that I'm going to say regarding the mental game. As an athlete, as a tennis player, we already heard 90% is mental, but we focus so much on the physical, the agility, having court awareness, patterns of play, technique, serve, return serve, and little is really focused on how we can improve our mental game, because we know if we can improve our mental game, it'll just really increase our performance. So I'm going to introduce you today, if you haven't heard of that, is acceptance and commitment therapy, also known as, they call it ACT, acceptance commitment therapy. That ACT is the third wave of applied behavior analysis. Applied behavior analysis is just science. It's how humans behave. It's how we learn. It's how we become socially significant in our communities. And it's starting to get into sports a lot. And with this ACT, it's a great way to talk about those private events that are happening in your head, because it's behavior. We have observable behavior of actions that you do, as well as private thoughts that are also behavior. So we're going to dive into this and giving you some resources to be able to then execute them on the court, and your performance level will then increase. So we've all been out in the course, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I hit that shot into the net again. How stupid could have I've been? Oh my gosh, I'm so angry. And those things are happening in your head. And then it carries on to the observable behavior, which could look like I'm now smashing my racket. I'm hitting my racket on my foot. I am hitting the ball into the net. I hit the ball over the fence. My shoulders are down. So you can see anyone that you've seen have that, or yourself demonstrating those behaviors of, normally you could define it as the word of frustration, angry, sad, upset, and it's not really a good place to be or a fun place to be. So let's get going. One of the biggest things as a tennis player to start recognizing is writing down, you can do it now or a little bit later, your biggest values of why you enjoy the game of tennis and love the game of tennis, and what you're looking for in the game of tennis and or life. You can also apply this to your off-court life. And if, say, you write down your value of, okay, I want to improve. I'll enjoy playing tennis because of the social aspect. So you write between 1 to 5 values of what kind of tennis player do you want to be? Like, what are you striving for? Why do you go to practice? Why do you go to the matches? Like, why are you watching tennis on TV? Your biggest thing is, it could even be the passion for it, or you want to be a creative player. You want to, anything like that will guide you and lead you on the tennis court. So when you start having, like, oh, I'm going to smash my racket down, and maybe one of your biggest values is, I'm looking to improve. And you have to ask yourself, if I'm smashing my racket down on the court, am I going to improve? No. You're moving away from the player you want to be. You can maybe say, have the value of, I'm doing this for my social life. I really enjoy being with friends. Well, if you're hitting the ball into the net due to frustration, is that leading you to the tennis player you want to be? Smashing the ball, oh, am I going to really get a lot of social joy out of this? Probably not. So that's why before you begin any, it's first figuring out why you're playing tennis and what you want to get out of tennis and what is your top 5 values of being a tennis player and athlete. So after you do that, you kind of move on to, okay, you're out on the tennis court and there's a thought, you hit the ball into the net, and all of a sudden your private thoughts start taking over, and then you start wrestling around with them. And because that's so distracting, it takes away from your game. You can tell when tennis players, you can say, wow, they're in their zone, they're in their flow, wow, they're hyper-focused on the game. Nothing can stop them because they allow these private thoughts just to sit in their head. They know they exist. You can't get rid of them. The thoughts that you have in your head, fear, anxiety, frustration, anger, happiness, they're all the way we were designed for survival. So they're always going to be there. So deleting them isn't an option. Wrestling with them is not an option. So accepting them, it's a part of who you are. It's the way you need to be in order to survive and to learn from your environment and move on. You know, you've heard it 1,000 times in all the different mental tennis books, point by point. You've also heard you can't do anything about that shot you just had, but you can worry about the present moment. You also heard just focus on the ball. And the biggest thing with tennis players and acceptance and the commitment therapy is you want to accept the thought, let it be what it is. It's just a thought, and it's only your thought, and commit to actions that go towards your biggest value of being a tennis player. So if it is, I want to be creative out in the court, therefore, those are my values of me, okay, say I want to return serve. And one of my biggest things is I want to be a creative, dynamic tennis player out there on the court. And I have to realize, okay, the thought came in, I'm going to accept it, and I'm going to commit myself to action, something that's observable, that someone in the fans can observe when in front of 1,000 fans. They can observe that action, as well as someone's videotaping you. They can view the action as well as you can observe the action, such as for this return serve, I'm going to hit down the line. That is a commitment of action that they can visibly see that you hit down the line. And it's going towards your goal of being creative on return of serve. So let's go through. We're standing there, return serve. We automatically go into the net. We accept it went into the net. It's a part of the game. It's okay. And you focus on the present moment of, I'm getting ready now for the next return serve. And the next return serve, now I'm going to commit myself to my action. And the action I'm committed towards now is I'm going cross court. End of story. It's in my head. I'm committed to that action. So all I have to do right now is focus on that. When you have a focused goal, a focused task on the tennis court, your performance will increase. So I'm going to give some great examples. Okay, you're standing up at the net, you're waiting for your partner to return serve, and you're thinking about the present moment. In the present moment, what you're thinking of, I'm moving my feet up, I see the ball is going across the net. I'm just focusing on the ball, where that ball is going, and you're just being in that present moment. So say you are returning serve. Returning serve is when those moments are, you're spending a lot of time just thinking in your private world. And the biggest thing is, you've heard it 1,000 times in the inner game of tennis and so many instructional books, is keep your eye on the ball. As simple as it sounds. You can tell in the inner game of tennis, they also said, look at the seams of the ball. And for some reason, when you look at the seams of the ball, you get really hyper-focused. And when you get focused on a task, we've already learned earlier, your performance increases. So if you're focusing on the ball, your private thoughts